scam caller won't stop calling me, so I find a clever way to shut him down. Here's my encounter with a crappy telemarketing company. I cut some details because this could have been twice as long. Names are changed as well. Let me start by saying that I get a crap ton of calls from card services. Screw those guys. This story has nothing to do with them. I like to mess with scammers, so I often take their calls and string them along for my own amusement. I know it probably makes them call me more, but it's the burden I bear to supply my hobby. A couple of days ago, I got a call from a bullcrap company wanting to extend my car warranty. The company has a name on file with my phone number, and they think I'm Mr. Jones. I am not Mr. Jones, I'm his son. I guess technically I am Mr. Jones, but not the one they think I am? Let me get on with it. The agent runs through her spiel for a couple of minutes, and I plainly say, I'm not Mr. Jones. To this, she replies, "Ugh, why didn't you tell me at the beginning of the call?" And she hangs up. What a B-word. Now at this point, I assumed the number was fake, but since they sounded American, I call it back. Even though the number was in my area code, it rings straight into their system, and I'm greeted with, "Hello, Mr. Jones, can you verify the make and model of your vehicle?" I replied that I'm calling to report that an agent just hung up on me. Then the next person hung up on me. Fricking jerks. So I began calling back. A lot. They're clearly frustrated. This one grumpy jerk answers, and to throw him off guard on an unrelated topic, I ask, "Are you voting for Trump in 2020? And he replies, "Heck yeah, I am. Well, you're going to be on Brokeback Mountain," or some dumb homophobic crap. You know, the usual stuff a Trump supporter would say, and he hangs up. I call back and get grumpy fricker again, and he's clearly frustrated. He asks if I don't have anything better to do, to which I reply, no. At this point, he informs me that I'll be placed on a permanent call list and I'll receive a call daily after hours, to which I reply, don't you have anything better to do? Grumpy fricker tells me he gets paid by the hour so he doesn't give a crap and hangs up. So I call back again. At this point, the seemingly small office staff have recruited the big guns out of a desperate frustration to end my calls and sell me a gosh darn warranty on a 2003 car with 183,000 miles. Enter Roger. Roger is a salesman. He's as persistent as a motherfricker with his pitch. So I start to accuse Roger of working for a scam company. Roger seems to actually have a passion for this company, and when I ask for a website, he gives me one. To my surprise, they have their services listed on the site, but the name is not the name they're using on calls, and the domain is only 2 years old. The domain also has nothing to do with cars or warranties or anything remotely close to what they're offering. I concede to Roger that I believe him when he says they're a legitimate company, albeit a crappy one on par with the ilk of payday lenders, and we reach a point of mutual respect. Roger is polite with me, so I'm polite with him. Now we're friends. I explain to him my history with scammers, and I tell him that the reason I've been calling incessantly is because one of his agents hung up on me. Roger isn't pleased, and he says he thinks he knows who she is and he'll talk to her. Goodbye, Roger. Have a nice day. Fast forward to 7 p.m. when I'm on the phone with my wife. My phone starts buzzing and I check to see who's calling, and it's a restricted number. I tell my wife I'll call her back. She knows I love messing with scammers, and I take the call. I say hello twice and then hear these words that I'll never forget. "Remember me, butthole? Permanent call list." And I proceed to laugh with delight at the absurd notion that Grumpy Fricker has actually followed through with his grand plan of calling me at a mildly inconvenient time. He hangs up. Now, one key detail that Grumpy Fricker is likely unaware of is that I now have a friendly relationship with his manager, who seems to actually take pride in his job. I also know the number to his call center because I called it about 1,000,000 times that morning. There was really no need for Grumpy Fricker to use a restricted number. Naturally, the only thing I can do here is to call my new friend Roger and let him know how his employees are spending company time. I call the number and I'm greeted with, "Hello, Mr. Jones, can you verify the make and model of your vehicle?" I ask to speak to Roger. The lady says, "I can help you." So I tell her that one of her associates just called me from a restricted number so he could call me a butthole. She said, "Oh, let me transfer you to Roger." Roger answers and I say, "Hello, Roger. Do you remember me from our talk earlier?" He does, of course, so I tell him that prior to our conversation, Grumpy Fricker put me on the permanent call list. I then describe Grumpy Fricker as an old grumpy fricker and ask him if he might know the agent I'm referring to. Roger declines to name names because he doesn't want to single out one of his employees based on their age, and I respect that. I then tell him that Grumpy Fricker in fact just called me from a restricted number so that he could simply call me a butthole. I offer to email Roger the recorded call, but he declines as we've built a respectful relationship based on trust and civility. Roger then interrupts me and says, "Hold on a second, let me look into this." A few minutes later, he gets back on the phone and says the gentleman, Grumpy Fricker, just confirmed my story and that his behavior is unacceptable. He then tells me that Grumpy Fricker will definitely be written up for his behavior as it's quite unacceptable. I reiterate that I thought Roger would be deeply troubled to find out that his employees were behaving this way, as they represent a totally 100% legitimate business enterprise, and this would reflect quite poorly on them. He thanks me for my call and apologizes for the situation. Get fricked, Grumpy Fricker. I hope that was your last write-up. On behalf of all of us, thank you for giving that gentleman what for. I've often been tempted to follow in your footsteps and begin my career as a professional salesman troll, but as you say, doing so can result in them calling you more often. And to be honest, I should be narrating rather than wasting my voice on these guys for 4 hours a day. Continue to block all restricted numbers. But thank you nonetheless, good sir, for wasting these people's time and ensuring that at least some of them are too busy being led in circles by you to have the time to call the rest of us, and potentially annoying them so much until they just go and find another job. Also, it's hilarious that Grumpy Fricker's decision to pay you back for giving them a taste of the call center's own medicine ended up with him being formally disciplined. Roger is the one enigma here. A potentially honest call center manager? I just kinda thought they were all con men. Maybe it's all an act from him and he's not actually disciplining his employees at all. Wouldn't be surprised, to be honest. And I guess Roger benefited from Grumpy not wasting his precious time to annoy the author. Maybe I'm wrong and too cynical, and maybe honest call center managers exist. Who knows? Lie about your rank to an actual higher-up? Enjoy your new neighborhood nickname. Ah, this sweet victory story. Definitely a favorite of mine. When my husband was in the military, we lived in a small and quaint off-post housing neighborhood. We were moving soon as he was medically retiring, and we had a pretty pleasant 3 years in our house. Spirits were great, all things considered, until this little sack of crap moved in down the street. This guy and his friends were car guys. Nothing against that at all, I'm a bit of an enthusiast of heavy machinery myself. But not during quiet hours when my child is asleep. And not when it involves literally sawing a car in half. Yep, sparks are flying and all. To say the noise was concussive at 10:30 at night is putting it gently. So naturally, my husband starts getting a bit irritated with the cacophony. I must admit, so am I. We aren't that old yet, but certainly in the adult mind frame to know when to shut the frick up for the day. I'd just gotten home from work and my irritation paled in comparison to his. He eventually decides to confront our dearest neighbors as tactfully and politely as possible. He begins the walk to their house. It's about 30 seconds into this that I can hear yelling growing continuously louder, echoing throughout the usually sleepy street. I can see the two mechanic aficionados puffing out their chests and getting closer and closer to my man. He's very calmly standing there, arms folded in front of his chest, slowly nodding. The conversation reaches an ebb, a resounding, "What's your rank?" from the mechanic. A calm response from my husband, inaudible from this distance. Mechanic A fires back with, "Oh yeah? I'm a staff sergeant too, B-word. I pay the rent here and I can do what the frick I want. Get the frick off my property!" My husband, now laughing, returned home and said Mechanic A had called the military police. He said he'd wait outside and flag them down before they got there and asked to go talk to the mechanics with them. They arrived about 2 minutes later and briefly chatted with my husband. They went to the house and began their assessment. It didn't even last 5 minutes before they left and my husband came back, laughing even harder. Apparently, the guy that screamed at him was not a sergeant, but a specialist in supply that had had a few too many beers and decided to build a Frankenstein's monster-esque contraption in his carport. I mean, welding and beer go hand in hand, 10 out of 10, right? The military police cracked up as they walked back to their car with my hubby and sided with him. And to sweeten the deal, he was the soldier of one of my husband's friends. He very easily could have gotten into far worse trouble for his ego. From that point on, he was referred to as Lord High Speed, by his co-workers. Peace returned to our street. He never sawed another car in half again. Look, I've been barely tangentially involved in the armed forces, and even I, a rank amateur, know that you don't start playing the rank game aggressively if you don't know what the frick rank the person you're talking to is. And if they are a rank above you, only bad things can happen to you if you decide to go on the offensive like this. Also, you're getting drunk and operating heavy machinery like this, so there's a very good chance that the person you're bluffing to is going to recognize that you aren't the sort of guy who gets entrusted with any sort of meaningful military rank. Older ranked people who know and like each other talk about these sorts of idiots, and you can guarantee that unless this guy's overseer really liked him, he was going to be that bit more tough on his discipline going forward. What a moron. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. After my ex did something unforgivable to me, I left him stranded in a foreign country and told his mum on him. Decades ago, I was backpacking through Europe with a friend, a former boyfriend. The trip started off great, but a couple of weeks in, we were in an overnight sleeping car on the train. While the other passengers from our room were in the dining car, he tried to commit the unspeakable act on me. At first, I thought he was joking, but he wouldn't stop no matter what I did or said. I fought and begged him to stop. He kept telling me I knew I wanted it. He only stopped when the other passengers came in. I was in too much shock and disbelief to say or do anything afterwards. I was in a foreign country, all alone except for him. The next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. I doubted myself. Was I overreacting? We checked into a hostel and left all of our belongings in a locker. Important detail. When we went into the town to explore, I timidly brought up the previous night. He gaslit me so hard, he almost had me believing it was me who committed the unspeakable act against him. I snuck back to the hostel. I told them we weren't staying there after all and got a full cash refund. For his spot, too. They were fully booked and our 2 spots were snatched up before I even left the lobby. I took our stuff out of the locker and left his pack sitting unsecured. I took all of our shared supplies such as food, guidebooks, and the Thomas Cook train schedule book. This was before the internet. Trust me when I say the book was vital and expensive. I hopped the next train to the opposite end of Europe. Before I did, I made a quick international call to his mother, telling her what he'd done. Worth every penny. I wish I could have seen his face when he realized I wasn't coming back from the ladies' room, and later when he had nowhere to stay that night, no food, and no idea when the next train was. And then when he talked to his very angry mother. The one thing I didn't do was take his passport. The hostel was holding them, and they tried to give his to me when I checked us out. But I only took things that belonged at least in part to me. Why stoop to his level? Last I heard, karma hadn't caught up with him. But maybe he learned something from it all and changed his ways. Yeah, right. But I can choose to think that if I want. Yeah, I'm sorry, there isn't enough karma in the world to pay that guy back. There are a couple of moral crimes that'll make you dead to this particular narrator, and the one he attempted is one of them. As far as I'm concerned, if he tried to do something like that, he deserved to have his passport stolen as well. He probably wouldn't die or anything, he'd just have to spend a long amount of time in an embassy, getting himself sorted and having to spend a ton of money more than he had planned to get home. He deserved worse. Thank God he wasn't successful in his attempts. She broke my heart? Well, I broke her career. My ex-fiancé and I were together a good amount of time. I fell in love with her, put a ring on her finger, and was completely loyal to her for the whole stretch. I'll use the name Julia. Julia decided to tell me that she wasn't happy. She needed a break. She was no longer in love with me. After some digging, I found out she was screwing around behind my back. When confronted, she deleted everything. Compared to her phone records, there was quite a bit missing. After betraying my trust and lying to me for 8 months straight, I felt it was necessary to even the playing field, considering she wasn't feeling the same hurt I was feeling. Julia worked in the car sales industry. During her time there, she would send me surveys to complete if she thought her customers would leave a bad one. It's an industry norm, but never talked about. Negative surveys lead to a lower average, and if the average drops below a certain point, she owes money. If it stays above, she gets money for every positive survey she has. This is against her company's customer privacy policies. We would intentionally leave the house when we filled them out so my home IP wouldn't be attached. I was getting credit card offers in my email for these customers. On top of the survey fiasco, she was taking certification tests for people at her workplace for cash and who knows what else. The worst part was the guy she was screwing around with was a co-worker. She originally masked her texts with him, saying she was working a deal. My next step was to write all of this up, send it to the manufacturer, her employer's corporate office, and the trainer for the region. I also included some media sites and made it so they'd feel more inclined to take action. The next day I was contacted by her corporate office and asked to call in to provide more detail. I did and was assured that this matter will be investigated swiftly. I was able to provide the emails to corporate, and that's what ultimately sealed the coffin. During this ordeal, I wasn't quiet about it. I told Julia what I was doing. She thought the managers had her back and she was untouchable. A day passed and she left her work, and an hour later she returned, screaming and crying about how she'd been suspended. The following day, I got a text from Julia saying she had been fired. Not only did she lose her job, she lost her career. She'll never step back into a car sales position for the rest of her life. In short, my fiancé cheated on me and I ruined her career. Am I the jerk? Well, everyone sucks here. Your partner sucks for cheating and carrying out such crappy work practices, her company sucks for letting this go on for so long, and then only firing her when it looked like it would spread to the press, and the author double sucks. First for getting someone fired for unrelated reasons to their job, and secondly for aiding and abetting her illegal work practices and then tattling on her for revenge. This really rubbed me the wrong way. Yeah, being cheated on sucks and wrenches your heart in half, but I can't imagine just having the inherent hate in my heart to try and burn down someone else's life as they left. Oh, and try is the operative word here. Car salespeople have a shifty reputation for a reason. A lot of people in the comments were chiming in to inform the author that this woman probably walked into another dealership the next day to land a job. These places don't want upstanding moral citizens, they want people who are prepared to cut any deal no matter how dastardly to sell cars. So hopefully you left it there, were satisfied with your petty temporary revenge, and you both tried to be better people afterwards. Somehow, I doubt it though. You're going to assign me to make balloon animals at a site with no kids? Okay, I'll just do my job. Way back in the long ago, in the before times, mid-level chain restaurants would have these people walk around to make balloon animals for kids as they waited for their food. I was a teenager and needed money, so I did this for a while. The restaurant would pay this agency and they'd tell us what restaurant to go to and when. Key to this story is that we weren't paid. On an average night, I'd make around $50 in tips over 3 hours, and on special nights it could be as high as $200. But if there were no customers, I'd make nothing. Yes, it was in the US, and it was probably illegal to not pay me, but it was in the 90s, I was a teenager, I didn't know better, and I was happy enough with the money I made, most of the time. After working for several months, I must have fallen out of someone's favor, and I got assigned to a restaurant in the business district. I have no idea why they wanted someone making balloon animals there. The key audience was kids, and I never saw anyone there under 30. The first night there, I made $5, which wasn't even enough to cover mass transit to and from the location. After being assigned there twice in a row, I complained. But I was told that if I didn't go, I'd be banned from any more assignments. Cue malicious compliance. The next week when I was assigned there, which was the third time in a row, I waited until there were a couple of guys at the bar that were tipsy. I went up and asked if they wanted balloon hats. No charge. They were hesitant, but I promised they'd be good. They agreed, and I got to work. I broke out all of my skills to make these hats that were clearly people in a cage. The people were all pink and had prominent bubbles on the chest and derriere. An inflated balloon tied around the waist made for a bikini bottom, and a carefully tied balloon in their hand made for a bikini top. They asked what it was, and I told them an exotic dancer in a cage. They loved it. I got a $20 tip, but more importantly, they went to every person in the restaurant to show off their highly adult exotic dancers in cage hats. They demanded to talk to the manager to tell him how awesome it was, the super uptight fundamentalist manager. The manager was not happy and told me to go home early. The agency called, angry, but I used my most innocent voice to tell them I was just making what the customer asked for, and I didn't know they'd make a scene. Agency said, well, they banned you from ever coming back. The next week, I went back to another $17 an hour location. In short, I deliberately got myself banned from a crappy work site by making a risque balloon animal. Why did that restaurant want a balloon animal maker? That's the only massive conundrum in this post for me. You definitely weren't a jerk. You saw a way to get yourself out of a crappy situation and you took it. Winning. And although crass, your balloon making skills seem really advanced. I don't know that I could make a regular stick figure, let alone one that was recognizable as an exotic dancer. Props to you and your very specific set of skills. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.